everyone, welcome once again to Pop Culture Comics in Overland Park, Kansas. I'm Captain Logan, and it's time for my comic book picks of the week. This week I'm going to mix things up a little bit. I'm going to review, instead of a kid's book, 2 DC books and 2 Marvel books, and then an indie book. This week, let's start off with some DC stuff. Here is Penguin, Pain and Prejudice, a brand new miniseries, number 1. Now that all the number 1s have been released for the New 52, it's great to see DC mixing it up with some other titles, like the Penguin and Huntress mini starting this week. This isn't the first time the Penguin's past has been explored, but it feels fresh with the authority, wit, and breathtaking horror Greg Hurwitz and Simon Krodansky bring to the table. With as much story, background, and in-depth characterization we get in just one issue here, I'm thrilled that we'll be treated to 4 more issues of this. Simon Krodansky is the current artist on Spawn, and I have a feeling we'll be seeing his rich, dark, gothic art gracing the pages of more books like this in the future. I've been saying with Spawn that he's an artist to watch out for. His style is perfect for this material, and as I've come to expect from him, every panel is nothing short of beautiful. The Penguin, an awkward and deformed creature, comes off as almost graceful here, poised with confidence and certainty in every panel. He's not a joke. He's terrifying. I got so sucked into this that writing this just after I finished it, I felt weird even putting down the words awkward and deformed for fear of what the Penguin might do to me for saying that about him, after the horrific way he takes care of a man who only begins to insult him after bumping into him, and snivels apologetically once he realizes who he's talking to. I won't give it away, but like I said, it's horrifying. This is not simply the origin of the Penguin, but rather a craftily plotted tale set in the present about what seems to be a pretty routine scheme for the Penguin, who wants to steal a particular priceless object I won't give away. Every moment of flashback serves the present story in some way, either having a direct effect on the plot, or else telling us something about the Penguin's character, and he's developed to explain why he makes the decisions he makes. We learn about every facet of the Penguin, traits that have been attributed to him for years, such as his love for the finer things in life, and why he relates so much to actual penguins. The way Hurwitz has the young Oswald comparing himself to penguins is sad and poetic. A flawless piece of art, and one of my favorite comic books so far this year. Also from DC this week, we're going to look at Grant Morrison's Action Comics number 2. I enjoyed this even more than issue 1. If Morrison's darker take on Superman turned you off on the first issue, I encourage you to give it one more. The way Lex Luthor, now a full-fledged evil scientist again, treats Superman along with Sam Lane and the Army is barbaric and cruel. He insists that Superman be called it instead of he, and justifies his tests on Superman's endurance with an electric chair on the basis that he isn't human, so he has no rights. I really like all the incorrect assumptions Luthor makes about Superman, like that he's a shapeshifter and actually looks like a weird alien animal that was apparently found when his ship was. The tone is still pretty bleak, but all this makes this younger Superman's lack of optimism and rougher methods more understandable. I also appreciate that not everyone in the government thinks he should be treated this way. Morrison is portraying individuals as evil or confused or misguided or frightened, not making any blanket statements necessarily about real-world organizations or institutions. We see a Superman here who can make light of his plight, who, though cocky, is old-school Superman clever in the way he handles his situation. It's bizarre how different this world feels from what we're used to, yet how much more of it resembles the earliest days of Superman comics. Morales' art is sometimes jaw-dropping, and I'm enjoying more iconic images that crop up like in last issue. We're also starting to get some Kryptonian mythos, and there's a neat cliffhanger ending involving that. And my first book for Marvel this week is X-Men Schism, number 5 of 5. If you know anything about this book at all, you know that the title refers to an inevitable rift between Cyclops and Wolverine, so my saying that happens here in this last issue isn't really a spoiler. This issue is how that happens, building on the events of last issue. I think Jason Aaron has done a fair job of not rushing this conflict. The split up here happens because of one incident about Cyclops' willingness to use young mutant kids as soldiers and turning them into killers, and Wolverine's refusal to accept that as a necessary evil. But that idea is a great example of the difference between these two men and their philosophies, and I like the moral dilemma devised out of the basic idea that one of these men is a team player and one of them is used to getting the job done by himself. Recognizing that people have to work together sometimes to fight a common foe is one thing, but perhaps you have to consider who it is you're working with, and as a leader, whether what you're demanding from them and what it will do to their characters is compromising enough that the ends don't justify the means. But Cyclops too has a point. There are only so many mutants left now to protect their home, so who else is there to fight? The issue opens with another incredibly epic and brutal sequence of action panels, though not disgusting or hard on the eyes. If you've ever wondered what Cyclops and Wolverine could really do to each other if they totally lost it, this is the issue for you. They're holding nothing back. When Cyclops really lets himself go, there are panels where Wolverine looks practically like his zombie counterpart. And at the end of the scene, there's such a fitting line that really encapsulates the whole argument showcased in the series, when a kid sitting with his friends off the island and watching all of this says, "You know what I like most about being a kid? Senseless violence." And I'm not going to say anything else. I'm looking forward to seeing where things go from here. Also from Marvel, we're going to take a look at a one-shot. Here is Spider Island, Heroes for Hire. This one-shot covers the first 4 days of Spider Island, showing us how the Heroes for Hire have been helping out with the Spider Island crisis during the events in Amazing Spider-Man. We see Paladin, Black Cat, Elektra, and the others deal with AIM agents that pop out of a secret base, as well as generally fending off New York citizens who have transformed into giant spiders. Paladin, since he doesn't have powers, isn't immune, of course, and we see him deal with transforming himself, which is handled in a really interesting way, as he uses his new powers to help his friends until the last possible moment before his inevitable complete transformation. Lately, I've been getting some questions from people about how necessary some of these Spider Island stories outside of the main arc are, and I'll say they're really not necessary at all. They just give you a more complete picture and show you what more of the Marvel U is doing through the crisis than we see in Amazing. But if you're reading Heroes for Hire regularly, I would especially recommend picking this up, as it deals with the Misty Paladin relationship that's been building for a while in a touching but kind of sad way. And for my indie book this week, I felt the need to talk about this. Here is Spawn, number 212. This is maybe the most important issue of Spawn since number 100, at least from a mythos perspective. So many questions are answered this issue, and I don't want to give anything away. There's a lot of exposition given from Clown to Jim about Malebolgia's endgame, about why he's been keeping so much from Jim, about why he wants to defeat Malebolgia, about how exactly heaven and hell work, about Jim's powers in connection with the fact that he's the only Spawn in history to not die before he becomes a Spawn, and even a really interesting revelation about Al Simmons and his suicide. I usually hate this much exposition being spilled out at once, and I do think a lot of this could have gone gradually over the last 12 issues. Frankly, some even before that. On the other hand, the really cool thing is, if you used to read Spawn and gave up on it, say around the early issue 100s, because there were more questions than answers and it felt too convoluted, you really should read this issue. Even if you haven't read any of Will Carlton's run, and even if you have no intention on reading past this issue will clear up things you might have wanted answers to 100 issues ago. I've already praised Crianci's art this week, so I'll just say it's astoundingly pretty as usual. And I'm really impressed with how varied it is here, with the different styles he's using for short flashback panels, some that go hundreds of years back, others that go to the early days of Al in the costume. For tons of exposition, it's a really interesting and enjoyable read, and there are other scenes mixed in, setting up other sides in the upcoming war with Malebolgia. Really, really enjoyed this. And other stuff that came out this week. Here is Detective Comics number 2. We get more information about the Doll Maker. This is a book guaranteed to make you say, yeesh. And there's another brand new miniseries I mentioned for DC this week. Here is Huntress, number 1 of 6, written by Paul Levitz, the creator of Huntress, and some beautiful art by Marcus Toe. And here's Sonic the Hedgehog, number 229. This ends out the Genesis arc, the 4-part Genesis arc. I didn't feel the need to review this because I've reviewed a lot of these already, but this ended really well, and it's quite a fun read. And then another book from Marvel, Avengers 1959, number 1. This is a 5-issue mini, lots of mini-series this week, and this is a group of Avengers in 1959 from the Cold War put together by Nick Fury, and it includes people like Sabretooth and Kraven the Hunter. Well, hey, those are my picks for this week. If you're ever in the Kansas City area, be sure to check out Pop Culture Comics right here in Overland Park, Kansas. It's where I am at this very moment. It's my favorite place to get comic books. If you're watching this at the Pop Culture website, be sure to follow us at Geekvolution on YouTube. You can also follow us on Twitter at Geekvolution, and I'm doing micro-reviews of all the other comic books I'm reading there. Be sure to support your own local comic book store if you have one and you're not in this area. Thanks a lot for watching. I'm Captain Logan, and happy reading.